Hi, I'm Fiona Stoddart. I'm a local tour guide and I guide people on secret Solway tours out of Carlisle, around the Solway area in Cumbria and in southwest Scotland. So coming out of Carlisle, as you drive out along the Solway, you're passing through an area that's got thousands of years of history. There's been nomadic Helvetic people, Romans, Vikings, industrialists, World War II army, all visiting this area, and they've all left their mark on the landscape. Edward I had come up into the north of England in pursuit of Robert the Bruce. He wasn't a well man at this point in time. In 1307, he'd come up, stayed at Lanercost Priory for about 3 months. As I say, he was not an awfully well man. He had then gone to Carlisle, he'd held a parliament in Carlisle, and then he brought his army out to this point in Brough Marsh. The reason he was here is because of an old crossing that there was over the River Eden and over the River Esk into Scotland. It was a crossing called Solway, which was, it's a Viking name, it means muddy path, which pretty much says it all. But it was a muddy track that was a ford across the rivers, and it was the safest place for armies and for kings to cross over into Scotland. The morning of the 7th of July in 1307, his attendants woke him. He was suffering badly from dysentery and he died in the arms of his attendants. This monument, which marks the place where Edward I died, from this place his body was then taken just to the local parish church, which is just up the road. This is the church at Brough-by-Sands, and it is a place that sort of displays many of those layers of history. The oldest part of the church is the middle section, which is 12th century, and then this eastern end of the church is 13th century, and then the Peel Tower, the big fortified tower, is 14th century. And inside there's a fantastic big iron gate, which is called a yett, which it's a Viking word for gate, and that actually locks from the inside so that people who broke in couldn't get into the local community who were locked safely in here. Because the church, as it is, stands in the footprint of a fort called Aberlava. If you carry on through the village along the main street, that's thought to be pretty much the line of the wall. And then when you get out onto the marsh, Brough Marsh, it becomes a little bit more disputed really, because the water has always come right across that marsh area. It still does. They had it's thought a peat and wood and turf structure that they could rebuild quickly, and the actual line of the wall is to some extent disputed. When you drive across the road over Brough Marsh, people think it looks like a no man's land, but it's one of these areas that again has lots of history and lots of stories attached to it. Probably the most famous story is the story of the Solway spaceman, which is to do with a Carlisle fireman who brought his family out on a sunny afternoon onto the marsh, and he took some photographs, and when he had the photographs developed, there was what some people think is a spaceman-shaped figure stood behind his daughter. And this is a story that got into local newspapers, and then it went global, and you can look it up on the web today and see information about it. What I do with the Secret Solway Tour is take people on a journey through the area, seeing beautiful places, hearing lots of local stories, learning about local history, and visiting these lesser known sites that people love because they're really interesting when they get them explained to them. And, you know, the interpretation that I can offer as a guide in a Secret Solway Tour brings alive a lot of the history of this area.